Well, so nice to meet you. Congratulations on Abruptio. Wow, what a film. What an
Thank,
experience.
thanks.
Is that one of the puppets behind you?
Yeah, this is Richter, Chief Richter, the police chief.
Oh my god.
These puppets just pop up around your house and you don't even know it. Lives here.
Okay, so I would love to know why puppets. Like what about puppets was so attractive to you for this movie and in general as a filmmaker?
Um, the genesis is things about 10 years from conception. And so I don't really remember it that well. My wife, fortunately, is the producer. She's about 10 years younger than me, so her memory's a little better. And she remembers me waking up from a dream with the idea of puppets, like everybody's a lifelike puppet. And I think I just took that idea and went with that, try to come up with a script that exploited that idea.
Oh.
Also,
Okay, so then
you
oh,
can record voices for it and then take your time making the movie. Go out to voice talent and then fabricate the puppets and then, go about making it over the course of years if you had to.
oh, I never thought about that. About like that process of get of like because I don't know why I thought the voice acting comes later, but was that the first thing that you record? You did the voice
Yeah.
recordings first
And sometimes it
before
does
doing the
come later. I think
editing.
like in the Dark Crystals, the series they recorded, the puppeteers would say the lines as they puppeteered, and then the actors would come in later and voice the parts to the mouth. They'd lip sync to it. But I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to get these
Oh.
actors in and do their thing, and then the puppeteer can lip sync to the voices.
Oh, cool. Okay, that does make sense.
Mhm.
But how did you get to what your puppets look like? Who did you work with? What was that process like in designing your specifically very lifelike, kind of uncanny puppet?
These were all life sizes proportionately. They were not miniatures, first of all. So first idea we had was to make life casts, which we found to be unnecessary. We just realized that you could just sculpt heads, and it worked out fine. It worked great. So we dropped the whole life cast thing on actors and then started sculpting it. We had a few different puppet fabricators. Nobody really does puppets. We went out to a bunch of people. They're more special effects people. Everyone says they do
Yeah.
puppets, but then when it gets down to it, they really don't understand, the needs of a puppeteer as far as the biomechanics and all that. So eventually we found someone,
Oh.
Jeff Farley, who took the ball and ran with it and really delivered really good puppets one after the next. And so I would bounce ideas off him. I'd send him references from the internet or, actors and things like that. And a lot of it was him listening to the voice work and coming up with, the design based on that. So it was just kind of a group effort.
Cool. And I was curious how voice talent reacted when you presented them with the script and kind of told them about the story and what you were trying to create with the Brevshio.
I think it was. I think to some degree the script is off-putting to a lot of people. Like James Marsters said, it was a piece of filth when he first read it. But then, and I'm not going to argue with him, but then he conceived of it with puppets, and I think the same for Robert Englund. They thought of it, what would this be with puppets? How far can we push this idea? Will people be engaged with these inanimate objects? Will they be horrified by what's going on? Will they buy into this world? So I think it was a really cool experiment. So it was really sort of enticing. This concept, and it's never been done before. We didn't know if it would work. So I think that drew a lot of the talent.
That's awesome. Well, and I think it's really cool because when I going into this, I was like, what? I didn't really know what to expect, but then seeing how a lot of it is like shoulder up and using it looks like actual people's like legs in certain moments, right? And it was just
Yeah.
really interesting how you, who edited the film, put this all together in such an interesting way.
Well, I think of that was a lot of previs because you had to have a very good idea of what this movie would look like, 8, 9 years ago when you started shooting it or whatever it was, and you couldn't vary it all that much because you had the voices, you had to work with those, and sometimes a scene would be shot, we'd shoot one character and then a few years later come and do the other character they're talking to, that sort of thing. So yeah, you
Oh.
just had to know what this movie was going to look like. So it was very rigid. There was no improvisation or any of that stuff. There was very little wiggle room. So
Oh.
you had to conceive of the movie. You had to know when you were going to do a wide shot and how you're going to pull that off. If someone's driving a car, you had to know how you're going to do that. There's all these challenges that were created that you had to kind of solve in advance or either years in advance or months in advance, so that you could kind of do the scene properly and make it convincing.
That sounds incredible and also terrifying as a
Yeah.
filmmaker.
Well, it's always hard. It's always magic to make a movie because, it's
Oh, yes.
24 pictures in a second, and you have to convince people they're watching something moving. But this is just like one big magic trick. Like, could we pull it off? It's an interesting gimmick, but will you actually make something that motivates people to, to stay engaged, and to stay with it to the end? Because there's a lot of stuff in there you don't want to watch. So yeah, no, but I like challenges, I guess.
What have you seen? What has reception been like then? I know it's been at so many festivals, and I've been here. I mean, I've been hearing about it. I'm so glad Anchor Bay is like supporting it and bringing it to the world. And I'm curious what that reception has been like for you as the filmmaker and the conceiver of it all to experience that with audiences.
Yeah, I mean, it would be as you expect. You come up with something that's never been done, you're going to get a pretty violent reaction to it. There's a lot of people that are huge fans of it, and a lot of people just give it half star. They just think it's a piece of garbage, which I expect. And I didn't want to make a safe movie. I'm an unknown art director. I didn't want to make, a safe movie. So I wanted to make
Hell
something that
yeah.
was going to be really volatile and something that challenged viewers. So I'm okay with that.
Hell yeah.
It's a wide range of responses to it, but there's been enough favorable
So
responses
cool.
to it that I'm okay with all the ones that are talking trash about it. I'm all right with it.
Well, and as a director, I mean, you've been creating a lot of work. This isn't your first feature by any means, but you've done so many shorts, and this is obviously your first time working with puppets,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Like in the
we're not
so
puppet
I
people. Yeah, this
mean,
was our first puppet. Yeah. No, we did a ton of shorts, and so my wife wrote two movies. First one was a really basic feature, and the second was sort of an anthology of 5 stories. And then after those two, we just did them back to back on really, with friends and in our house. After that, we decided, all right, let's just try to make something proper. We'll get some nice equipment. And I learned a lot in the first two, so I could DP it myself and edit myself. Um, yeah,
oh,
but it was a ton
okay.
of work. But we worked as a unit, so it was just really a skeleton crew, just she and I. She did the production stuff, set dressing, costumes. She was the crafty, organized. The producer organized everything, sent out the call sheets. She did all that end of it, and I did all the behind the camera stuff. I worked with the puppeteer, worked with the fabricator. So it was really just 90% of it was just she and I making this movie, which is incredibly exhausting.
Wait, that's crazy.
Mm.
Doing everything.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's really
That's
tough.
incredibly exhausting
It
and
was.
cool and impressive and terrifying.
Yeah, no, it was terrifying because yeah. So any act of making a movie is like running an army, so usually, and it is a risky venture. But it's especially risky when you have nobody really supporting you. You're laying out your own dolly tracks and setting up the lights. And we had some friends help out here and there, but most
Yeah.
of it was, and a lot of it was just basically let's just set up our garage like to as a set, and we shoot it in our garage, which we did. We've done a lot. We just it's a low budget production. You have to work with what you have.
Yeah. Well, that's crazy because to me, like, puppets feel so not low budget and it feels so expensive to get puppets, like, especially ones that look like yours. So it's like, it's so cool to hear
Yeah,
how you did it in such a low budget way.
but
Like,
I think
how you,
relatively low budget compared to like having these actual named actors on set for weeks. I think that, and with actual
yeah.
just and with a crew, I just think it probably would be more money to do it that way.
Yeah. So this is a very weird question, but there's a moment in the movie where there's like it's almost like a Scooby-Doo, but it's like with a girl with big boobs and an old man. Did you animate that yourself, or is that from
Oh
something,
yeah,
or is that
yeah.
made for the
So
movie?
in this world, basically there's two rules. One is that the animals are actual animals; they're not puppets. And the other is that when we're watching the screen, it's a puppet. When a puppet's watching a screen, it's sort of a 2D animation. So the world they're watching on the TV is usually going to be 2D animation. So that was just some cheesy little cartoon I had a company, I think, in England that made these cartoons for me throughout the movie.
That's so cool. I love that touch, and again, like
Yeah.
making the world like that and layering it like that is so cool,
Thank
and
you.
just like shows the world building that goes into it, which I feel like is such a cool part about that
Thank you.
creative process, is the world building with
Yeah,
something like
thanks.
this.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was the big thing. Like, could you create a world like this, and would people want to spend any time in this
Yeah.
world? So I think you have to spend time thinking about that and creating it. Otherwise, it's just a gimmick. You know, you're just watching puppets.
Well, and I mean, it took you so long to make it. I can only imagine like the crazy amount of world building that even just exists in your head or on paper that didn't make it into the film. Like I can only imagine what it feels like to maybe be almost allowed to step out of that world now.
Mm.
Is that
Yeah,
is that a way to put it?
it's a relief. Well, I think, I don't want to give spoilers away, but at the end, this is really just a fever dream. And I've kind of like called it, an incel fever dream, because of this sort of person that I'm taking, this American male that I'm taking apart here. He's not really a hero, I don't intend him to be glorified. But what was the question?
Oh, no, it's just like being able to kind of step out of the world
Yes.
that you've been building for so long a little bit, or like,
Yeah, no, because
you
you don't want to
yeah.
be in this world with this person. I think that's what I'm getting at. And so yeah, so that the stream of consciousness part of it, like the narrative doesn't really work linearly throughout the entire movie. It's supposed to have that kind of dream logic. It's not supposed to be like make a lot of sense. It's not supposed to be necessarily cohesive. So it's hard to be trapped in that world for years. I'm a very logical
I
person.
can
I like things to make sense. I like to be around, heroes, and it leaves a residue on you. I think after a number of years, you just want to like take a shower and move on.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. Oh, yeah, absolutely. But so then what's next for you? Like what do you want to make next? What is your next kind of project that you and your partner are you're working on?
Well, I've been writing scripts. I write novels. The one that I've been kind of pitching out right now is sort of uh, an indie film crew making horror films. Yeah, splatter horror director. And it's interesting because I wrote that story. It's called Splatter, and it was interesting on its own. But then I thought, well, let's examine misogyny and horror and the monstrous feminine, and kind of work with those ideas, and let's like push our sort of quasi misogynistic main character against the wall and have him defend himself and using all these tropes in his horror films, and see how he does. And he squirms. So I think that's sort of a fun project I've been pitching recently.
Cool. I love that. Well, I'm excited to see what you do next. Your sense of humor is I like it.
Thank you very much.
Well, it was so nice to meet you, and
Thanks
it
for
was
having
nice
me.
to get to chat a little bit about this film.
Thanks for
This was
having me.
really
Great,
neat.
great to be here.
Absolutely.